All right, Amir, people forget, man, how big DMX was, but we haven't. And that's why we're here on The Great Debaters to talk about DMX's first 2 albums and to see which one we think is better. It's The Great Debaters, y'all. Alright, Amir, so DMX, he's one of the most intriguing characters in rap history, one of the also best-selling rappers in rap history, and also one of the biggest successes at the box office in rap history.
That's true, I forgot about that.
So, that being said, DMX is prime candidate for the Great Debaters treatment, so we're going to get into it, man. We're going to look at his first 2 albums to see which one we each think is the better project. So, we're going to go back to 98. The year of the X,
yes.
In all reality.
Yes.
So he came out with his first album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, in 98, and really had an unprecedented year in music history. Forget rap. In music history. He's the only, or he was the first artist in music history to have his first 2 albums debut at #1 and have them come out in the same year, which is astounding.
Yeah.
That being said, let's get into each project individually and then give our recaps for the people. So, Amir, It's Dark and Hell is Hot. What were your early impressions of the album and what songs stood out to you and why?
Freaking love it, man.
Okay.
From the intro, just coming out, blazing, dude.
Yeah.
No pun intended. Barking, no pun intended. Everything was hard. To Rough Riders Anthem was hard. To one of the best posse cuts I've heard my whole life, with Brothers Unstarted Something as the last track.
Yeah.
To concept tracks like Damien, which ended up being like a Jane Superman Lover effect, where it has multiple installments. Had 3 installments, I believe. Even starting off a legendary skit sequence with Prayer.
Speaking of Damien and the Prayer, the thing I really liked about that was kind of exploring the devil and God and this type of relationship. Obviously, Scarface had gone to these very dark places with his music before DMX, and I think obviously Scarface is the best at doing that. But I think DMX kind of examining a little more, isolating them to having a prayer and being, quote unquote, seeking knowledge and positivity and brightness in the midst of the darkness, and then having a full-on blown conversation with devils and stuff like that. It kind of separated him. But I also thought it was so powerful because I'd seen DMX perform several times in this era, and I always remember the Hard Knock Life tour when he did the Prayer in Anaheim. That was like amazing to see, like the whole stadium just like put up their X's and like do the prayer, and it was just phenomenal. So with you, what struck you so much about the Prayer and Damien?
Man, it was so original with the Prayer, dude. Like a skit like that with such darkness, and then he, you know, and even just knowing a lot about his life as well, and prior, just to know that he still has faith and he's still praying and he still, you know, looks to the higher power, and detailing all these dark stories like X is coming, and as we stated, Damien, I'm like, this guy is still praying, and he's having combo, you know, the song The Combo even. I just thought that it's just so interesting we get, you know, a balance, so to speak.
And I thought that was the great part of, one of the many great things about this album is you have that, and as we all know, the Rough Riders Anthem is the biggest song, and I thought it was amazing that that was a later single to where Flesh My Flesh was already out, and then Rough Riders Anthem like blew up, which was crazy. That is unprecedented, I believe, in rap history, where an album would come out and a song from the previous album would end up being so huge that it dwarfed what was going on with an album that debuted at #1. It was unprecedented, and just, it was amazing to see, and just amazing to see the movement, because before It's Dark and Hell is Hot, I was still living in Maryland before I moved to Los Angeles, and you know, Maryland, the Baltimore, D.C. area is like a mini New York, especially at the time. So we, you know, really embraced a lot of the New York artists. And DMX, I knew from how he was being received in Maryland and in D.C., I knew he was going to be huge. I knew it, and he blew up. And then Get At Me Dog, I really liked too because they had the tunnel in the video, but then they also had like the EPMD sample, which I thought was just great. So,
bro,
yes,
the Rough Riders music video,
yes.
the Rough Riders Anthem music video was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in a music video. All the AT, I was like, how are these people not crashing into each other? First of all, how close are they? And then just like
falling off themselves.
and on top of that, they're like on the bus and swinging freaking chains. Dude, that music video just gets you freaking pumped, bro.
But as I said, that video and song really took off once Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood came out. So let's get into that project, Amir, because Flesh of My Flesh, it sold less and it got overshadowed because Rough Riders Anthem really took off. But as I mentioned earlier, it debuted at #1. It's multi-platinum, and it has its own batch of astounding material. So of course the biggest song on there is Slippin'.
Yes.
Which to me is one of my favorite DMX songs, just because of how we talked about he did on separate songs I think better. This song I think was that combination of the happy and the sad and kind of the wanting better but knowing he's screwing up and like kind of this search for betterment in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the production was phenomenal, and the singing is it's a rare song where I think the singing catapulted it to another way and it didn't seem contrived or forced like a lot of, oh, let's do some R&B to make this song cross over to make it bigger. I really thought that the soulfulness of the crooning brought an extra element to Slippin' and made it like a super powerful song.
It was real genuine for sure, and as you said, it was not forced. The genuineness of it and his voice and the video and just on this album, I just thought was just so genius. And just to know, like we've talked about the prayer, we know this kind of DMX is you know, this is part of DMX, and just to hear him go full throttle on a song like Slippin' was just beautiful. Definitely a song that I didn't really expect to hear as far as production and singy-songy kind of thing, at least that early in his career. I didn't expect it.
I didn't expect it ever.
Man.
And then the thing is, on the album, the sequencing is astounding too, because right before that is The Omen, which to me is another one of those DMX songs. When I first listened to this album, I just remember hearing it and I was like, what in the world is this? It sounds amazing and it feels so dark and macabre, but it was also strangely mesmerizing at the same time. And then I didn't know much. I'd heard of Marilyn Manson, but I didn't know who that was. So I was like, oh, who's this? This is kind of weird. It doesn't sound like a rap person. And then I like looked, I was like, oh, that's the Marilyn Manson dude. So I thought that was all like really expertly done, and a very seldom discussed song as far as, because it's not a single or it wasn't a big song, but I did think that it really showed his artistry and showed, you know, how DMX could take a deep dive into something and really immerse you into his mind and what was going on with his, you know, thoughts and everything. What did you think of that one?
I didn't like Marilyn Manson too much,
Okay.
but I did like the song.
Right.
I did like the song. I mean, one song that I'd like to talk about that wasn't talked about as much is the intro, or the second song, Bring Your Whole Crew. It's just like the DMX I love to hear when he's just like tearing shit up, and the chorus is just like so ruthless.
Right.
Just bring more people, we're just gonna F them up. And the beginning,
that's what he does.
It's what he does.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this album, and to talk about wrecking shit and making a statement, how about that album cover, one of the most iconic album covers in the history of music, rap music, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Boom, he pulled up the CD. That's like, dude, whoever thought of that idea needs to get a raise.
I believe it was Jonathan Mannion, so shout out to him.
Seriously.
And I also think it obviously plays well into the album title, and I always thought too, Ready to Meet Him, the closing song on the album, I think was really good and powerful because I think with DMX, what he captured in his music is something that happens in life and happens in the world. Is kind of his going through what's right and wrong and how that kind of changes all the time. And I think that, you know, closing the album that way kind of, you know, I feel this way, but this person did this to me. Or, you know, this guy did this to me. How am I supposed to feel? How am I supposed to react? I think that's a very powerful thing that we all deal with, whether it's something dealing with violence or insecurity, anger, jealousy, happiness, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, but to hear him explore that in the midst of all these other songs, obviously several of them with very violent overtones.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was an amazing way to conclude the project and show how, despite his violent nature, that he also was looking at things from a much bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just thought Flesh My Flesh is great, and then of course the Jay-Z collabo on there is stellar.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, the blackout with the locks as well.
Oh yeah.
So I just thought that this album, while not as celebrated as It's Dark and Hell is Hot, you know, has its moments, and I think that it also, production-wise, I think that Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood is consistently better, because I thought that some of the production, while I love Dame Grease and the other producers on the first project, I thought at times it was a little thin, whereas I think with Flesh My Flesh it just sounded like heavier, more developed, more fleshed out, no pun intended. So Amir, all that to be said, let's get into it, man. Which of these two do you think is better? It's Dark and Hell's Hot or Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood?
I'm going with his debut. It's Dark and Hell's Hot, and
okay.
I will say this to literally talk about what you just said. As far as, and the main reason why I prefer that, well, yeah, the main reason I prefer this more is actually because of production.
Okay.
I think Swizz Beatz and DMX's best collab together was Rough Riders Anthem, okay, which was on his debut, and Swizz Beatz took a good majority of Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. And to be honest with you, out of my top 3 favorites on the album was only one Swizz Beatz produced song, which was Ain't No Way. I like that one quite a decent amount. But as far as It's Dark and Hell's Hot, just the range of topics, I think PK and Dame Grease being the main producers on it just did a great job of capturing the darkness for DMX with the production laid down, and the themes I thought were also good, but the themes are also great on Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, and DMX's lyrics. The main thing that held it back for me was a little bit of production and some of the hooks.
Okay.
But I'm going with the debut.
Alright, well for me, I'm gonna differentiate and deviate from you this time here. I'm going with Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. I think that Slippin', I think, is just such an amazing song, and Rough Riders Anthem is probably one of my favorite DMX songs, especially from the first 2 albums, but I think Slippin' is more powerful, and because of that, I would give that the nod. But then I also think, as I mentioned earlier, I just think the production is better, and I think it sounds like a better, more muscular album all the way through. And for me, was someone who's rapping about being menacing and terrorizing people, including himself, I think that's why I gave Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood the nod. And I just think that the things that were executed well on It's Dark and Hell is Hot, I think, are better executed on Flesh My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, with the same intensity, with the same yin-yang, good, bad, devil, God, dialogue and discourse. So that's my rationale and how I came to my decision. But that's Amir and me. Make sure you guys hit us up in the comment section, like, share, subscribe, and please comment. We will respond and let you know what we think of what you had to say. And let's keep it moving, y'all. I'm Soren Baker on The Great Debaters.
Amir Rahimi.
And check us out, y'all. Hit us up.